The wind was beating in our face and the rain was piecing down. We had gas house gorilla lead forward as we headed off into town. While Bill was this far right, I was only next in line. Hello Eagle was near mid-center with R.E. Poser not far behind, not far behind. We pulled along, hard left gas as our tanks were parched and dry. Many miles were under our belts as our Enfields rattled by. Enfield country near and far as the cars I could see. We had iron barrels and the mighty UCEs, riding the mighty UCEs. All there for all to see. 500cc of thumping power, kicking jumped about. Fuel injected glory plus that lone carb, his chub stood out. Side stands pulled and kicked us out, and at last we were on the way. Several ghostly chariots pulled a tab down Hell's Way, down Hell's Way. Throttle pin to the stopper rate, it came up fast. The aim was running cool, and I hoped that they would last. Overpass just up ahead and a huge big loop at that. We all split off our different ways, and that was the end of that. The end of that. Bullets flew in all directions as we headed off on home. Then now we're riding the canyons and the good times and alone. One day we'll meet again as a pack and ride as one. Several ghostly Enfields beating to the drum, beating to the drum, beating to the drum. Although the day was over, was all forgotten. Tonight we all gathered around our keyboards at the Classic Motorworks Community Forum. At the Classic Motorworks Community Forum.
Hi guys, how you going today? I suppose you're just wondering, you've asked the question, do you really have to run in these Enfields? And my opinion is, yeah, you really do, because over the years, the ones I've owned, if you run them in properly, they long term it pays the dividends, and they run a lot better, and they seem to develop a bit better power compared to if you run them in quicker. They sometimes don't perform as good as a bike that's sort of been running a little bit slower than the other ones. Like last year, for example, I got sick of these bikes, and I switched over and bought a Honda CR 250 Rally. I had that for a little while, and then I went and bought a Kawasaki 300. And both those bikes were a lot more refined than the Enfield, and they both performed well. Although the Kawasaki 300 definitely outperformed this Enfield, and the motor-wise, they were really, especially the Kawasaki 300, it was a really nice bike to ride and stuff like that, put out 39 horsepower and handled well and stuff like that. But both bikes, even though they looked alright, had no character, and I decided then to go back and buy another Enfield, so I bought a 17 plated graphite, and because I like these Enfields and they got more character. But and as soon as I got off the Kawasaki and went back to an Enfield, it was once again, even though it was a new bike, it was stepping back 50 years as far as having to get on one and ride it and stuff like that. But I was happy with the style of the bike, and it suits me more in one way than the other. But the thing is, you have really got to ride them in where you could get onto the other two bikes I just mentioned earlier and just ride them straight out of the shop and up to 100 kilometres an hour, and just get into them and ride them just as if you were getting into a new car and giving it to it each day. So the idea with these sort of bikes is it's very important with the running, and especially the first 500 to 1,000 kilometres, and you really don't want to get out there flogging the guts out of them. So I would suggest that if you buy one of these bikes, the idea would be to, for a start, depending on where you live. I live in a fairly cold climate here in Australia, and the first thing I ever do to these bikes is I always put in a straight off the bat, as soon as I get them home, if you've listened to any of the other videos or watched them, I've always put in an NGK BPR 60S spark plug, which I find here, or it's a lot better spark plug compared to the Bosch, because it in this particular bike it'll idle better and it won't foul the plug, and I won't have it cutting out or stuff like that, and it won't sort of run a little bit hotter or stuff like that. So overall for me, that is the best plug. So my procedure for running this bike in is usually, if you come out from coal, I rarely have to use the bike starter on these ones, so unless it's a really cold morning below 0 Celsius, that is. So it's very rarely have to use that. So it's usually you come out, a couple of minutes to warm it up, and then you can just get on it and go for a ride. You usually, say from a brand new bike, you might only take this bike out for a 10 or 20 kilometre run, or say 10 or 15 mile, maybe using first 3 gears. Usually stay out of the 4th and 5th gear, keep the rev range probably up around that 3000 rev mark, so that you're not lugging the bike or anything like that, because these bikes don't like the guts being pulled out of it, so you don't get out there riding it in 4th or 5th gear. Any of the riders that have had any experience would know, you don't get out there pulling the guts out of these sort of things, or you won't have the bike all that long. It'll cause you trouble further down the track. So if you stay in that first 3 gears, you're not going to have any drama like that. So you'd go out, do 20 kilometres, 30 kilometres maximum or something like that right in the very beginning, but usually around 20 k's, come back, park the bike, and then leave it there for a few hours. What I usually do on those very early stages, I just come back, park it, and might not touch it till the next day. Let it totally cool down, cycle from, because it'll heat up fairly well on those first couple of rides, bring it back. I sometimes put a digital thermometer on it, and you'll see the temperature up in the head go up to around 108C or something like that pretty quick. So I ran a digital thermometer on this one and fired it off on it, and it, up near the spark plug, it was showing 110 or something like that, and on the first ride, and I'd only ridden it 4 mile or something like that, and then it settled down in that area and dropped down to around about 108. So on those first few rides, when it's all rough inside, it seems to pick up heat pretty quick, and then after you ride it, it smooths down a bit, and when the things start getting polished inside the motor, it sort of runs along a lot smoother, and as you start putting the miles on it, it seems to cool down a lot better as the motor starts polishing itself. And that's why when you naturally, when you start putting miles on it, it starts smoothing itself out and running a lot better. But what I'm getting at in those first running period up to 1,000 kilometres you ride it, you let it cycle through a hot cycle, let it cool down till it cools down and contracts sort of in the motor, or whatever you'd like to call it, and then you come back out, take it for another ride. And what you do actually find is each time you get on the bike, it does seem to ride better each time than the time before. And even when I was out on the bike, it was yesterday, you can notice the bike will pull better even just after it's done a few hundred kilometres on coming up to a areas where you'd been before, where it was struggling before, or you can feel it freeing out in the motor in the gears. Like you'll feel it might be, seems like it's good for a couple of hundred revs better here than what it was 2 or 3 days earlier when you may have been down 100 kilometres or less on the motor. So you will notice long term it's that way, but the idea is you don't get out on these bikes and say, oh well, bugger what the running period says, I'm going to get out there and ride at 100 kilometres an hour, because I have had earlier on a couple of these bikes where I did ride them in or run them in fast, and a fast running's no good for these bikes because they don't like it, and you pay the price. They almost like they shit themselves, because the power, they seem to lose power, and a slow running bike develops better power, or it appears to develop better power than a quick running bike. So the idea is to run them out, let them get warm, not hot, warm, bring them back, sit them there for several hours, let them cool right down, then get on it. And then after this running period, and they've gone through the cycle period, all is good. And then after that, the idea is during that period, give them that 3 or 4 oil changes what you'll do yourself, and get the rubbish out of the motor. And you know, that's only going to cost you $100 if you do 4 oil changes, oil and filter changes yourself. And you know, you've done that, you've got all the shit out of the motor, and I think you know, you should be happy with that side of it, and you should have a pretty sweet motor. This is just a temperature sample of the cylinder about 15 minutes after I got off the bike. So we'll start up in the spark plug, work our way down. So you can see it varies quite a lot. But no smell, nothing like that when I come back. I think it was sitting on around about 108, something like that. Now I remember when I bought my first one of these 5 years ago, the dealer told me, I said, oh well, how do I run it in? And he said to me, just use first three or four gears, and he said just keep it in the sweet spot. He said you'll know if you're in the wrong gear. He said it'll start jumping or something like that, and he said just drop back to a lower gear or something like that, and he said you'll soon get the hang of it. And he said the sweet spot is up around 2800 to 3100 revs. And I thought to myself, how would I bloody know that? I haven't been on a motorbike for 30 years. Last bike I had was a GD 750 Suzuki in the 70s, so it's been a long time since I've been on one of those. So anyway, I bought the bike and brought it home, and you get out along the road and the bus is jumping along and stuff like that, and you're thinking, no rev counter, no nothing. So that was a bit of a problem. So after a while I thought to myself, oh, as usual, like people with not much to do, they get on eBay frigging around. And so I got on eBay looking around, and I got onto one of those sites where you got onto these, and I got onto this thing here called a tiny tack, or just a little tack, and you can pick them up. They make different ones on them. I've had a couple of different ones since then, and you pick them up for about $20, and or a little bit dearer for that one, but I've had a couple of them on the bike since then now. They actually work pretty good, and they're pretty easy to fit. And for the first few bikes I'd bought in these Enfields, I decided I'd hook them up and see how they go. And they worked really well, and they served the purpose. And after that it was really easy. Like when I bought the bikes, I just buy one of these, and I would fit it like so into this position here. Then we'd bring it just the one wire around and just wrap it around the spark plug, and then after that you would kick it on, kick it, turn the motor up, turn the key on, press the starter, and away you'd go. Yeah, so I thought it's not much use telling you about all this stuff if I don't at least try it. So anyway, so I did a temporary hookup on the bike. So all I did with this particular, like I said, you can buy two styles of this. This one's the tiny tack, and it's got two wires running out of it. So the red wire just ran and wrapped around the spark plug, and the white wire, you just hook up an earth to the bike somewhere. Now, like I said, both of these you can buy on eBay. This tiny tack is a bit more expensive. I think it's about, I don't know, it might be $30 plus, but you can get the other version there. They both look the same for around about the $20 mark, and they're usually got one wire coming out of them, and they just go straight to the spark plug and just wrap around it. If I was going to go for one, I think I'd just go for the simple one lead to the spark plug one, compared to this one. It runs to the earth one too, because they both work the same. And like I said, this is just a demo one. I don't really require it. So, but there it is sitting on, just wrapped around the plug down there like that. This bike, yesterday I fitted a sports exhaust to it, so it's a little bit more open now, so it'd be idling a little bit more than, a bit higher than what it usually is. So, but you'll get an idea how it works with the tacho on it, and you'll know that what a good investment it'd be if you just bought a so if you set this up in front of you, like so. And use double-sided tape to hold it in position. Yeah, like I said, if you use double-sided tape to hold it in position, there's no reason at all that running in the bike, you'll have no trouble keeping it in the sweet zone of 3,000 revs, and you'll have no trouble running your bike in with causing no damage, no lagging or anything like that, and all will be good. So I hope you find this video helpful, and thanks for watching. I probably got a bit carried away there on the sign off and never finished me running thing. So let's say we're running in there, we've got to around about 400 k's or 250 mile, and at that stage I might say to myself, oh well, I'm sick of riding out 60 kilometres an hour, say 35 mile an hour. I'm pretty close to the 500 k, so I'll start running now to say 80 kilometres an hour, 50 mile per hour. So for the next 100 I will run it up to 50 mile an hour, and it'll handle that, speeds up the 50 mile an hour for the last 100 before it goes in for the dealer service at the 500 k or 300 mile mark pretty easy. So that's alright. That last 100 will do that pretty easy. It'll go in, get it serviced. When it goes in for the service, all they do really at the 500 k's will just give it a quick check over, tighten any nuts and bolts which have come loose. Usually with these bikes at 300 kilometres, there's always nuts and bolts that come loose, and all they'll do is an oil and filter change and just check it overall to see if in most cases that's all they do, check it over to see if anything has come loose, oil, filter, and you pay them and go. That's about it. Now when you get the bike back and you're going to run from 500 k's to 1000, that's where your book will say that you can run it from 60 to 90. So really after that you'll be out there and you will run it from straight up. You'll be that happy to get out of the 60 zone. You'll run it back up to 80, and around the 80 zone is where you'll first notice your vibrations coming into it, and that's when you'll know for sure how your bike handles vibration, whether it's going to be a good vibrator or a bad vibrator. And it'll be just a shade over 80 or right on 80 it'll come in, and you'll know from 80 to 100 how bad it's going to be or how good it's going to be. So in that 500 zone to 1000, I'll run the bike fairly well and sit on 80, 90, from that mark all the way through up to 1000 kilometres. By the time I've done 700 k's, which is roughly say 400 mile, I'll put it on 100 kilometres an hour or 60 mile an hour every now and again. I'll still be at this stage I'll probably be taking maybe 50 or 80 kilometre runs, and then rather than bring it home or that for a cooling, I'll just pull up at the side of the road and give it a 10-minute break or something like that. So that's something you look at when you get into that range later on. You'll just pull over the side of the road, give it a rest for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you smoke or something, pull over, have a fag or whatever, and just have a break there. So the idea is still give it a break and something like that, because it pays to give that break, and you can look or frig around, do whatever you want to or something like that, just fill in the time, because it's all important on this run-in cycle of the thing. So and then later on you'll be able to get going. I found that once these bikes are run in and you've put it, by the time you get to 2,000 or 3,000 kilometres, you can get on these bikes some days and run them 200 miles. There's plenty of times I've been out on these bikes and run them 200 miles in an afternoon, which is, we'll swing back the kilometres, which is about closing in on 350 kilometres, and you just fill them up with petrol and get out on the road. And when I've done that, I've probably only had 1 or 2 quick stops on it. So just pull out in the afternoon and just ride them, and you sit on 100 k's, or sometimes if you're in the back road 110 kilometres an hour, and you just give it to them, and they'll handle it too. And that's if you run them in right, and regardless of what people say, they will cruise easily at 100 kilometres an hour. And if you look after them on the run-in, they're a fun bike, and a C5, when things are going right, they're very quick through a corner. And I think this bike in particular will be very fast through a corner. So you can have a lot of fun on one of these bikes, and if you do the right thing and run it in and look after it and do the oil changes and stuff like that, I think long term you'll have a bike you're very happy. But so if you keep that in mind and take your time, do a slow run-in. Remember too that you only have to run the bike in once, so it's not as if you've got to run it in half a dozen times. So take your time and run the bike in. You look after the bike, and long term I'm sure it'll look after you. And again, thanks for watching this video.